Hi, everybody. Welcome to Evening TV. The disease to please has its roots in childhood abuse, in emotional abuse, and complex post-traumatic stress disorder. It also sets you up for repeated abuse. And it even indicates that you could be more a target for crime. You're vulnerable, and predators can pick up on that. And so this is more about you becoming less vulnerable. Trying to get the guy that's sitting there looking, you don't want him to see you and go, there's my target, there's the one. And that's what they've been doing probably a good chunk of your life. And that's why you have repeated stories. That's why you have a laundry list, a long line of people that have come into your life and taken advantage of you and hurt you. And so I want that to stop. Pleaser syndrome has its roots, like I said, in childhood and generally speaking with a narcissistic parent, an over-authoritarian parenting style in your household. It comes with a lot of neurotic behaviors. Okay? Neurotic people believe everything is their fault. Everything is their responsibility. They take on too much responsibility for things that they couldn't possibly be responsible for. And on the other end of the spectrum, people with personality disorders don't take nearly enough responsibility. Even when they have totally victimized someone, they don't take responsibility for that. That psychology, the field of psychology, is built for neurotic disorders. It is geared around neurotic disorders because that's primarily what we used to have 100 years ago. People had neurotic disorders most of the time. If they had a psychiatric problem, it was a neurotic problem most all of the time. That's no longer the case. More and more and more people have lower conscience, lower sense of responsibility than not. And so personality disorders have come way on the rise and neurotic disorders have declined. And a lot of the reason for that also is that neurotics are in pain. People that are neurotic go to get help from therapists, and they're also very amenable to help because they're uncomfortable and they're in pain. They don't think they have the answers they need. They're coming there seeking help. They're seeking that a therapist can help them get out of pain. People with personality disorder is a person with lower empathy, lower responsibility, lower they're blame shifters, and they're not in pain because they externalize. So the people around them are in pain, but they're not so much in pain. So they're not very amenable to help. They're not going to go seeking help because they're not in pain. And if somehow they end up in therapy, they're not very amenable to help. They don't think there's anything wrong with them. So this is the problem, and this has a lot to do with why things are turning into epidemic proportions, such as the narcissism. We're saying narcissism epidemic is the phenomenon of our time, and that is why. It's because it's risen because a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons is that the field of psychology hasn't kept up with the changing way that society has changed. Okay, but people pleasers are neurotic, and by and large, neurotics are not damaging the world. The neurotics are not causing other people pain. Neurotics are causing themselves a lot of pain, but they're not doing a lot of harm to everyone else. There is a place where some neurotic disorders can cross over into dangerous territory where they do get a little bit of a different flavor. And so on its most extreme case, a people pleaser syndrome can start to resemble something that looks a lot like a borderline personality disorder. And so that's a different animal kind of altogether. And I'll point out a couple of symptoms here where that's most likely to be the case. But for the most part, I'm not talking about borderline personality disorder. I'm not talking about people that are doing this on purpose. Quality number one, they have a downright neurotic fear of conflict or negative emotion or disappointing anybody or having a they have, that goes hand in hand with a neurotic need to be liked, which goes hand in hand with another one, an erotic need to to get approval. They don't champion for themselves. They don't give themselves permission to do things. And so they're constantly seeking permission from authority figures and parents, and they need validation and rubber stamping and all that kind of stuff, which can drive a lot of people crazy. If you're a real self-starter and a real sort of entrepreneurial kind of a person, and you have someone like this working for you, this can drive you. You'll have to really train the people working for you to take on authority. If you're not someone who wants to micromanage every step of the way, you're wanting them to start to be able to really think for themselves. These are not people that are real comfortable thinking for themselves. Low self-confidence. That's another quality. Low self-confidence. They have, there's also an inability to say no. And this goes right along with not blurry sense of self, a blurry sense of who they are and what they're entitled to. And they're excessively compassionate, which can end up feeling a little bit disingenuous, to be real honest. And it's also exhausting for them, because say there's 5 people in the room, they care about all of them equally, have to keep all of them pleased equally, and they've taken it on themselves. It's their responsibility to keep all of these people happy, and it's just absolutely exhausting. And also, it ends up really bothering people, because there are priorities in people. Say one's your boss, say one's your spouse, say one's your child, and the other ones are, for instance, a good example would be a client of mine who said that when she grew up, her mom would be off at the hospital taking care of church members of her parish, or parishioners in her church, when they were sick and in the hospital. But she would be home sick in bed, and her mother was never there with her. Conscientious of other people's feelings and all that. That goes together with avoidant personality, a little bit avoidant, and a tendency to isolate, because it's so exhausting. That even to be around people is to be all wrapped up in what they need and all wrapped up in their emotions, and it's your responsibility to meet their needs. And so to not do that, you have to be alone. And so they tend to isolate. There's another quality, over intellectualizing. What this is a desire to make everything okay, to make what happened in your past okay. And so you let's see. Well, yeah, he does kind of lose his temper, but I drive him to do it. I can be really annoying sometimes, and I totally get why he does it. Justifying abusive behavior. It's like, yeah, it was a little bit rough. They were a little bit, my dad had a temper, but, it wasn't like anyone was, starving me to death or beating me with a rubber hose. It was, it's like justifying, minimizing, rationalizing abuse, so that you don't have to go through all the next stages that you would have to go through if you're really going to admit that you were abused, which is then to heal the abuse and confront the abuse and do all those things and change those relationships and take care of yourself. To go along with the isolating, there is a sense of loneliness that will be a blurry, fuzzy, hard to understand loneliness with a mild depression, which they won't understand. You don't understand why you feel lonely. And the reason is because the people in your life, generally speaking, are probably using you, and you're probably being abused and manipulated by the people that you have around you, because you've attracted that kind of a person into your life. You are addicted to approval of others. You're addicted to approval of others. And so this is a one step further from the approval seeking. This is where you're actually addicted to it. You are addicted to being liked, and you're addicted to you're externally focused. Your opinion of yourself and your opinion of what you do doesn't have a whole lot of weight with you. You don't have a strong sense of self, and you don't have a strong sense that your opinion matters. You really need, the locus of control you have given is external, and so you've given other people the right to validate or invalidate you, and so you're really seeking that all the time, just to know that you're okay, to know that you exist even. A couple of qualities that go along with this are going to be a little hard to swallow. They kind of go together. One is immaturity, and the other is excessively impressionable, and another is neurotic naivete. Those three kind of go together. And what this is that, and I had this. I didn't so much have the immaturity. I definitely had the neurotic naivete, and that's good. And also, this is how I was taught that a good person, an optimistic person, a positive person is. They think this way. And to be otherwise would be pessimistic and negative and cynical, right? And I didn't want to be that. And also, that is considered very unfeminine. That's why this people pleaser thing is even more of a problem for females. It's a problem for certain men too, but it's particularly hard for females because the people pleaser thing is a feminine thing to be. People are not always good, and basically a street savviness and some of that kind of stuff. Those can be seen as more masculine qualities. But on some level, for some reason, I had I had evidence all around me that people didn't have the best of intentions where I was concerned. I had all kinds of terrible things people had done, just repeated times when I'd been taken advantage of and used and lied to and all this stuff. And I still kept this sort of Pollyanna attitude about, the world's basically good and all that. And a big part of it was, is that I really wanted to live in that world, and I wanted to be able to be positive, and I didn't want to be cynical, and I didn't want to see the world as harsh and bad. But, the truth is, you have always, you get the best answer is to embrace reality, no matter what it is. You come back to embracing reality, and then you're able to protect yourself, and ultimately, yeah, it is a sad and disappointing day when you have to go, okay, everybody's not nice. Everybody's not nice. But there are good people. You just have to be smart and realize that just not everybody's a good person. And also realize you're exceptionally good. Everybody's not as good as you. And that's okay to know that. It's better, it's not only just okay to know that, it's required to know that. You're a good person. Not everybody is like you. A lot of people out there see good people and think, how could I use their goodness to benefit myself somehow? You don't think like that, and it's to your credit that you don't. But just you have to be smart and know some people do, and not everybody thinks like you do. But if you're a people pleaser and if you get repeatedly used and abused, and you're always surprised, that how could he be so mean? If you find yourself saying things like that, how could they do something like that? If you find yourself repeatedly saying that, which was so me, I always was saying things like that, you have got to get a reality check. Because you shouldn't always be blindsided after 30 years of people doing crummy stuff, which I was. And it may not ever go away. Because we do see the world as we are. We don't see people as they are. We see people as we are. We assume that people are like we are. And it's not always the case. So just be aware. And, when people show you who they are, believe them. That's the biggest one. That's a Maya Angelou quote, and I love it. People show you who they are, believe them.